Hi there, I'm Jim Vance, and this is Endurance Insights brought to you by 80/20 Endurance. I'm here today to talk about the top endurance training charts for coaches and for athletes. If you're using TrainingPeaks, this chart is readily available, especially on the mobile app, and I'm going to show you why. It's an amazing tool to keep your training consistent and to show you how you're progressing. So let's start with what we have here is a basic PMC chart, as it's referred to, or as TrainingPeaks calls it, a performance manager chart. This chart starts with this blue line. So basically this blue line represents a score from every workout you do. They use a mathematical formula to calculate the stress that's on your body from that session. If it's an easy session, it's low stress, low score. If it's a harder, longer session, it's probably a higher score. So the average of these scores over time show what the body is willing to tolerate or able to tolerate as a stress level. So if we look at a long-term average, that's represented by this blue line. We call that chronic training load, or CTL. So it's just a long-term average of your scores. This pink line represents a short-term average. So you can see these spikes up and down with the pink line. What that does, that pink line helps you to see where loads are concentrated. For example, if you do a lot of your bigger, harder, longer sessions on the weekends, you'll probably see a big spike in load for that time frame relative to the rest of the week. So this really just shows how a body is handling load. You're continuing to progress load, you'll see the CTL go up, you'll see the pink lines go up. The yellow line is simply the difference between the two values. So instead of just looking at training from a perspective of load, though, because I'm sure you can tell whether a workout has been hard or easy. You don't need a mathematical formula to tell you that. But what you do want to know is, am I improving? How am I doing? Well, what we can do is we can take certain outputs that you have and lay them over this chart. Now, you cannot do this within TrainingPeaks on the web app, the web version. You must do this in the mobile app. And this is simply a screenshot from the mobile app turned to a landscape format so that I could see how this athlete was doing. And what I've done here is I've looked at 2024, starting back from November 1st of 2023, so kind of towards the off season as they got started back, all the way through late October of 2024. And so as this athlete prepared for the Ironman World Championships, you can see there's all these dots that are kind of clustered around here. But then we've got some dots that are way high up here that don't seem to cluster over here. What these dots represent are the 15 best performances, 10 to 15 best performances for an athlete in their outputs for certain durations of bike power. So what we have here at the top is we have 30 seconds power. So if we were to take the whole date range and find the best 30-second samples of power output from this athlete, and we plotted them, this is where we would find them. So this one was in January, late January, maybe early February. You can see we've got a concentration here again between April and May for these 30-second efforts. As you go down, you can see that these values, and we've got some numbers over here. These are power values. So this athlete was at 720 watts for about 30 seconds. Up here, even more than that. Here's some 600 watt efforts. Down here, we've got 360 watts. This is the 5-minute power for this athlete. This is the 30-minute power, the next line. The next line represents 60-minute, then 90, and then 180 minutes or 3 hours. So you can see that as this athlete began to come into the Ironman World Championships, we noticed a very large cluster of long duration best powers for the year 2024. That makes a lot of sense, right? As this athlete comes into their big A race, which is long course full Ironman World Championships, then they're probably doing training that reflects more specific demands of that race. And here you can see this athlete is showing some of their best results, and you can see that their 3-hour power is improving to where they're getting a lot of their best samples for this duration relative to these years as they go forward. So this tells them that their training is really on track and really doing well. They are definitely getting stronger as they come into the Ironman World Championships. Because remember, a PMC chart can only by itself show you load. Load doesn't necessarily mean performance. If you've ever been tired and not really performing at your best, but can still go outside and beat yourself down in a workout, then you understand that there's a difference between being able to tolerate load and being able to actually perform at your best. So this helps show you where load is helping to create more fitness or where load is possibly overdoing it. Because if you don't have these clusters as you start to work towards your ability to prepare for a race, or you start to focus on certain workouts for durations of 3 hours or more as you go into a full Ironman, or maybe it's a 2 hour or 90 minutes if you're going into a half Ironman or whatever, or some type of long mountain bike race such as Leadville 100, things like that. You want these longer durations and you want to see how you're doing with those. That becomes especially hard because the more load you have to put on your body, the more risky the training is. So this is a great way to manage and see where load is possibly becoming too much if you're not seeing these best performances on your PMC chart. When I coach an athlete, I'm always looking at this, because it doesn't matter how tired I can make them, it matters how much they can perform under the load. And so using this type of chart with these clusters will help show you how you can monitor training to make sure that you're not overdoing it. If you start to see and look in these periods here where you don't have many clusters for the workouts you're doing, it's probably a sign that you're either tired or not doing the right training in order to be able to achieve some of these best powers. Even though I just showed you a bike PMC, you can do the same thing isolating running files. So here you can see this athlete's looking at just their 2024 season. Again, looking from early November through to October, we can see where, again, highlighting durations of pace. Where were the best paces for this athlete so far from ranges of 30 seconds all the way up to 3 hours? Obviously, if you don't have any 3-hour run samples, you're not going to have those show up here as any trend. But if you do, you can see this athlete starts, they're putting in some longer runs and efforts here. But you can also see there's this big cluster right here where this athlete was under some load. You can see fatigue, recover, big cluster of performance. And then you also want to watch the trend. Is that trend going up? Is that trend going down? If the trend's going down, that's not a good sign. So again, a way to monitor your training, make sure that you are handling the load and able to make adjustments as you go before you reach a point where it's too late. You can also take this not just for this season, but you can compare seasons on the same chart to see, am I doing better this year than last year or potentially the year before that? You have to be careful that you don't put too long of a timeline or else the chart gets too scrunched. But this is a way that you can see. Here we're comparing this athlete's 2022 season with their 2023 season with their 2024 season. And because it's a mobile app, you can click on it, touch on with your finger, find the actual space, and there's a sample that's here that says on November 30th, this athlete had a 3-hour power of 285 watts. So again, looking at these clusters, highlight what you want to see, find out what the actual results were, but you get a sense here of where your training changed. Obviously, a lot more clusters of short duration here. That was a short duration focus for this athlete through the off season. And then as they got closer into the later part of the season, you can see a lot more 90-minute samples, 60-minute bests, even some 3-hour bests as they got later into the year. So These are all ways to track and see, how am I performing? And when you can do that, you can make changes to your training as you go. As a coach, you can clearly see, okay, I need to change something because this athlete no longer has some of these best performances showing up on the chart. Why is that? Is that because they're too tired? Is that because we plateaued in our ability to respond to this training stress? Or is it because we just need to rest them more? So all great tools to help you as an athlete or coach monitor your progress. This is the PMC chart. It's available in TrainingPeaks. You can only do this in the mobile app. I would encourage you to edit your settings in your chart. You can simply add the chart, go in and create all the settings, tell it what you want. With that, I am Jim Vance. This is Endurance Insights from 80/20 Endurance. Have a great day.